Tanzania is facing a quiet but intensifying campaign of external political pressure, delivered not through invasions or sanctions, but through diplomats, foreign-funded NGOs, religious actors, media networks, and powerful Western politicians who present their interventions as defending human rights and promoting good governance. Analysts warn that beneath the language of reform lies an attempt to steer Tanzania's internal politics and shape its future according to outside interests, a pattern increasingly recognized across Africa. The latest tensions follow opposition campaigns, disputes around constitutional reforms, and incidents of violence in which local authorities say foreign-funded activist networks played a major role. As a government attempt to stabilize the political climate, international media outlets and Western officials have issued a stream of statements portraying Tanzania as sliding into repression. Tanzanian officials counter that the same government, now warning of instability, have indirectly financed groups that contributed to the unrest. The contradiction is not lost on many Tanzanians. If Western states are the self-appointed defenders of global human rights, critics ask, where is their outrage in places where violations are far more severe? The humanitarian disaster in Gaza, where thousands of civilians have been killed, has generated only calibrated diplomatic language from Washington and London. In Sudan's conflicts, where aid agencies estimate more than 30 million deaths and millions displaced since 2023, the tone has been restrained. If the principle is human rights, the response should be universal. Dr. Banj Awadi, a senior East African analyst, said, but when the victims are not strategically useful, the outrage disappears. The selective concern becomes even more striking when measured against domestic realities in the same countries that condemned Africa. The United States recorded 48,830 gun-related deaths in 2021, the highest number ever documented, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Its firearm death rate remains more than 11 times other high-income countries. Yet, no European government has demanded political reforms in Washington or suggested that the U.S. administration should step down for failing to protect its citizens. If Tanzania had US-level gun violence, they would call it a humanitarian catastrophe, a seasoned journalist noted. But when it happens in America, it is treated as an internal issue. Western credibility is further weakened by scandals involving human trafficking, sex trafficking, and drug networks operating across Europe and the US. In several cases, officials have been implicated. The usual response is institutional apology and legal reform, not international condemnation. Even on issues as serious as GMO controversies or hazardous industrial products dumped into African markets, Western governments routinely evade responsibility. Climate change adds yet another layer of contradiction. The world's largest historical polluters, the US, the EU, United Kingdom, and other industrialized states, drive the environmental crisis that African nations now pay for through drought, floods, and economic loss. A study published in Resources Conservation and Recycling found that developed countries accounted for 58.8% of cumulative CO2 emissions from 1995 to 2015 along global value chains. Tanzania, by contrast, contributes less than 0.1% of global emissions. Yet, wealthy nations continue to lecture African governments while avoiding meaningful accountability for what many African leaders call climate injustice. Dr. William Ruto, Kenya's president, said at the UN Climate Summit, they are the silent killers of the climate crisis, but never the accused. In Tanzania, the latest interference follows a familiar script seen in other African states: fund civil society movements, amplify grievances through foreign media, mobilize diplomats, pressure the government on political reforms, and shape a narrative that serves external interests. Youth groups, women's networks, church leaders, and NGOs receive training, grants, and media support from Western agencies. Many operate with transparency and good intentions. Others officials say use human rights language to mask a political agenda aligned with foreign sponsors. Diplomatic missions issue coordinated statements often within hours of one another. Western politicians speak openly about Tanzania's domestic affair, sometimes based on incomplete or misleading reports. Foreign media then amplify these claims globally, strengthening the perception of crisis regardless of local realities. Tanzania's newly appointed Prime Minister, Dr. Mwigulu Nchemba, has categorically described the pattern as manufactured instability designed to influence political outcomes. The stakes are rising because Tanzania's strategic value has grown, he told editors in Dar es Salaam on Tuesday. We must say no and protect our country. According to the senior government official, Tanzania's mineral wealth, including graphite, nickel, helium, and rare earth, is central to global supply chains for electric vehicles, semiconductors, and renewable technologies. When governments assert greater control over these assets, foreign pressure tends to increase. Across Africa, similar patterns have preceded or accompanied attempts to weaken or discredit certain administrations. Observers warn that such pressure often escalates into calls for international investigations or involvement by bodies like the International Criminal Court (ICC). Although Tanzania faces no official action, analysts say the narrative being constructed around rising repression mirrors early stages seen in states later targeted by international legal institutions. If it continues like this, it will not be long before someone suggests dragging President Samia Suluhu Hassan to the ICC. Harry Mbweti, a governance researcher, said, "It is a political tool, not a neutral institution." Western states reject these accusations, insisting their engagement supports democracy and human rights. But African governments point to 2017 African Union resolution adopted in Addis Ababa, which urged members to collectively resist the ICC's political bias and explore withdrawal. Most African cases at the court were either initiated by Western-backed investigations or selectively amplified by foreign actors, despite far worse abuses occurring elsewhere without consequences. The question many Tanzanians are now asking is whether their country should re-examine its relationship with international mechanisms that appear vulnerable to geopolitical manipulation. Withdrawal is not a simple option, and Tanzania has historically withdrawal is not a simple option, and Tanzania has historically valued multilateral cooperation. But a growing perception of foreign interference has triggered deeper debates about sovereignty, self-determination, and the boundaries of external influence.